So probably like anybody who makes videos online, I get a lot of questions on email and places like Instagram and of course here on YouTube. And while I really try to answer all people who have genuine questions, after a while you do start to see some patterns and you also start to feel a bit like a broken record because a lot of the questions are pretty similar and some of them just get repeated again and again. So I thought perhaps I could make a video here and maybe save myself some time and also you. So without further ado, let's just jump into it, and I'll start with the number one question that is blowing up my inbox week after week, and I guess is also keeping a lot of you sleepless out there. And that question is, should I get the ZP6 or XYZ grinder? A lot of times it is the ZP6 versus the K Ultra, and that's both an easy and a difficult question to answer. The thing with the ZP6 is that it's a pretty special grinder. It gives you very analytical, very clear brews, but some people find it a little bit too tea-like, a little bit lacking in sweetness and body. And I think there are a few things at play here. The way I see it with all grinders and really any skill-based activity, you get to different levels and sometimes you're just not ready for that next one. I think it's the same if we're talking cars, guitars, snowboards and all sorts of things. You might upgrade your gear to something a bit more advanced, but it's also more difficult to use. The ZP6, along with other high-end grinders that focus on clarity, fall into that category. But it's not just about developing your skills, it's also about refining your perception and your taste preference. And it's not like ZP6 is more difficult compared to many other high clarity grinders. You would probably see similar opinions about the SSP brew burrs or multi-purpose burrs, for instance. But it's just that because ZP6 is the cheapest of those really high clarity grinders, a lot more people who aren't ready for that next step start to use it, while much more expensive grinders are less likely to attract someone who isn't ready for it, if that makes sense. So I think this high clarity style of coffee is kind of like music. Some people just enjoy listening to music casually, putting on whatever pop song they like, but the people who make music their whole life don't usually just listen to the same pop song as the average person. They might be into really avant-garde music, instrumental music or other genres that don't really have the same mass appeal. The same thing happens with coffee. The most advanced coffee enthusiasts often enjoy something very different from what most people think of as coffee. Their ideal cup might not taste like quote-unquote coffee, but more like tea or fruit juice. If that doesn't sound like a great coffee experience to you, then I can almost guarantee you that you won't like the ZP6. And that's totally fine because it means there are other grinders that will suit your preference way better. So it doesn't mean you need to get a bad grinder, just one that emphasizes sweetness and body more, most likely. So to get back to the question, should you get the ZP6 or the K Ultra? Well, I've actually made a multiple choice test that we can take together and that will determine the answer. Okay, so find your pen and get ready to note down the yes and no. So 1. Do you exclusively drink light roasts? 2. Do you follow at least 10 coffee roasters on Instagram? 3. Do you see Moka Pot or French press, or maybe both of them, as a waste of time? 4. Have you had a mustache at some point in your life and or a vinyl record collection? Do you have experience with at least one other decent grinder? And by decent, I mean at the minimum, a hand grinder with steel burrs or a Baratang core, if we're talking electrical grinders. If you get 5 yeses, then you should definitely get a ZP6 right now. If you get 4, then you might be a candidate. 3 or less, I'd say go for a different grinder. The K Ultra is a Goldilocks grinder, works for everything, all roast types, brewing methods. It's a good suggestion. Another question I get quite often is something like, hey, I would like to be a Q grader. Where can I learn more about it? Where can I find courses? And that is actually pretty easy. You can just go to the Coffee Quality Institute's website and check out if there are any upcoming courses. And they have a lot of different search options, and you just have to find the drop-down menu where it says Q Arabica grader or something like that. So I'm just jumping in here from the future because just a couple of days after I recorded this video, the content just overnight became super outdated because some really big news hit the coffee world. and that is that the Q grader program is changing completely. It's now being taken over by the Specialty Coffee Association, whereas before it was organized by the CQI. And this has come as a shock to Q graders, Q instructors, and a lot of people in the coffee industry. Besides all the organizational stuff, one of the big changes is that there will be a new cupping form, the so-called CBA cupping form. Another is that existing Q graders are being forced to kind of upgrade and merge into this new ecosystem, which is called evolved Q graders, and that's with a very short deadline. And that's actually one of the main things that's really upsetting to many people, because it's not cheap or easy to get a Q grader license. It's actually very expensive and time consuming. And then you have to do something called calibration every 3 years, which also costs a good amount of money and also takes time out of your calendar. I actually recertified around half a year ago, and that license was supposed to be valid for 3 years. But now apparently it's going to expire at the end of the year unless I sign up for new training. So it's kind of like getting your driver's license, being told it's valid for 3 years, and then a few months later, then you're told that it's not valid anymore and you have to pay again, retake the tests, and everything pretty much that you learned might not even apply anymore. So I think it's pretty natural to feel frustrated, and that's exactly how a lot of people in the Q community feels about this move. So I can't say whether this is a good or bad move for the coffee industry in the long run. I know the Q program was super serious, and it also played an important role in the specialty ecosystem. And I think the logic behind the changes, the move, and all that collateral damage, I think it hasn't really been explained in a super meaningful way. So if I were you, I'd wait 6 to 12 months, see how this whole situation plays out before considering enrolling. And then if you want to learn more about it, there's actually a super cool article from Daily Coffee News where they really talk to a lot of different sources. So I'll leave a link to that down below. And now back to the rest of the video. The next question is, I would probably say, the most asked question of all time if I go into my inbox and take a look. And it's, what grind size should I use for this brewing method with X grinder? Or how many clicks should I use for this brewing method? And honestly, I have to give the same answer I tell almost everyone. And it is, I'm sorry, I just don't know. It really depends on the grinder, the beans, your individual calibration, and a bunch of other factors. If you're brewing espresso, even something like the basket can make a huge difference. There's just no way I can give you a single grind size that will work perfectly. You have to keep in mind that I'm pretty much all the time testing new grinders. I think maybe I have 45 grinders at home right now, and I also swap around burrs all the time. So for me, grind settings and numbers don't really mean much. They're just arbitrary numbers. Usually I'll mention my grind settings in a review of a grinder, so you can always go back there and check. Personally, if I'm unsure about a grind size, what I usually do if I get a new grinder is I'll just grind a few beans and then I'll eyeball the particle size, and that works to some extent to get you into the ballpark. But from there on, you just have to brew and taste the extraction. Or if it's espresso, you have to go through that pain of dialing in yourself. You're the only one who can do it. Back in the day, Hoffman always recommended going finer and finer until you, I think he called it, hit a wall of astringency. And that's one way to approach it. You could also just go coarser and coarser until your brews get too watery. And once you try these two different experiments, you'll kind of realize that grind size is not something that is like 100% set in stone. It's also something that's a little bit based on your taste preferences and also really tied to your brewing style, how much agitation you are adding to the brew. So that can really change a lot. Are you using a 2-pour Hario switch technique, or are you using like 5-6 pour V60 technique? That's going to be two completely different grind sizes. I do actually have a blog post where I list different grind settings, a kind of a range that I would suggest. And I also update it from time to time. I'll put a link to it down below. And that post also includes some crowdsourced information about different grind settings. So there's actually a Google form where you can update your own grind settings. So if you see a grinder that's missing in the data set, then you can feel free to add your own grind settings. Another question I get very often, and this one, I think I probably get that more in real life than online. It is some kind of version of how many cups of coffee do you drink a day? So the truth is I actually drink a lot of cups, but I like brewing really small batches because it lets me drink more and experiment more and test a lot more gear and just enjoy coffee more. So I use the switch often. Sometimes I also use the Mugen inside the switch. And you can actually make really good brews with as little as 8 grams. And I just stick to my regular switch recipe. Maybe I'll change it up slightly, only let it drain for 35 seconds before closing the switch. And that way I can actually brew very small quantities that taste great. So it means if I'm testing 3 grinders side by side, then I can do a really good test with just 24 grams of coffee, still get really proper extractions that I can get a lot of data from without wasting coffee. So I think that's a really good hack. If you want to enjoy more coffee at home, just try the switch with small recipes. It does work quite well. I also recently picked up a great single shot espresso basket from La Mazuco. Lance made a really cool video about it, which inspired me to try it out, and I'm really happy I did. It just made me enjoy espresso a lot more because a double shot is just too much for me. I don't want to drink that much espresso at a time, so being able to pull a proper shot with a proper extraction with only 7 to 8 grams is kind of a game changer for my enjoyment of espresso. Finding a good tamper for that basket is a little bit challenging. It's a kind of an unusual size, 41 millimeters, and you need a slightly special technique to get it to work. But once you get all that set up, then there's no going back. Single shots are just way better because you can just enjoy a lot more shots in a day. So with all these pretty small cups and also super tiny espressos, I probably drink maybe 3 espressos and 5, 6, 7 cups of filter coffee. But because they're so small, if you convert them to like a regular cup size like this, it's probably more like 4 coffees or something like that. So not that crazy. And usually my cutoff window will be around 4 p.m. It's very rare I drink coffee after that, just because I also appreciate a good night's sleep. And sometimes I'll also take L-theanine, so that's the compound in green tea. You can get that in capsule form, and that will actually make the caffeine ride a little bit smoother and make you less jittery. So that's also a good hack to try. So this was a bit of an experiment, a new format on the channel. And if you want to see something like this again, then let me know down in the comments. And also feel free to drop any questions there, and then I'll add it to my list for the next time. By the way, if you want more of this kind of rapid fire coffee advice, then I have this video here where I share all my best knowledge I've learned after being a coffee geek for 16 years. So if you want to know more about all these things, then click that video and then I'll see you over there.